Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking about episode 2 of season 2 of Ultimate Spider-Man called Electro. Overall, I thought this was an alright episode. It's just, like the last episode, it was a little lacking in what I like to call crunch. So let's just start right getting into it. I've got my notes right here off to the side, and I've got some raspberry juice made interesting with the help of our friend Jin. So let's delve right in. As I said, we get introduced to Spider-Man's longtime foe, Electro. Now, Electro is one of my personal favorites in Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery. And I have to say, this is actually one of the, well, not without its flaws, one of the best presentations I've seen of Electro in basically any Spider-Man story that I'm familiar with. This really does a nice job of introducing Electro as a serious potential threat. And I really like stories that do it that with him. If you're familiar with the Breakout arc from New Avengers, it's basically a story of Electro busting and attacking the Raft, which is the Marvel Universe's main supervillain prison these days, and starting this enormous breakout and riot. And he ultimately gets the entire Avengers to come down on his head. And it's a really good story and really very nice way of presenting Electro as a serious, menacing character. I don't really remember who wrote it, but there was a story I read years ago where Electro kind of said to himself, okay, I need to start being smarter with my powers, so he started using his powers to make the gasoline in cars around him explode while he was fighting Spider-Man, and this stunned Spider-Man long enough for him to just start frying the heck out of him. And Electro literally made Spider-Man beg for his life in front of a crowd, and while Spider-Man was still sort of twitching and in pain, just sort of laughed in his face and said, okay, I made you humiliate yourself in front of this crowd. I'm satisfied. See you later, loser. Now, of course, Spider-Man eventually tracked him down and kicked his butt, but still. In any case, oh yeah, and there's one other. It was actually in the Marvel novels. There's actually been novels written of the various heroes of the Marvel Universe. There's one where Wolverine fought Electro and learned the hard way that fighting guys with electric powers while you have big pieces of metal sticking out of your hands is not really such a great idea. Electro literally used his powers to basically barbecue Wolverine from the inside out. Now, because of his healing factor, of course, Wolverine survived, but he was cooked pretty good and ended up having a serious mad-on for Electro. So in any case, Electro can be an extremely formidable villain and somebody who's not just a worthy foe of Spider-Man, but of any foe in the Marvel Universe when he is written correctly. Or I guess I should say when he's written intelligently. Now here, Electro is not presented as being a terribly intelligent person, but when his powers are amped up, he does use them in pretty smart and creative ways. Towards the end, when Electro was really just sort of going on that crazy rampage through New York City and messing with the communications and electrical systems all over the world, I was actually reminded of the movie The Lawnmower Man, if you're familiar with that. If not, it would take too long to explain, but that's what Wikipedia is for, right? In any case, like I said, while Electro himself is not presented as being a terribly smart character, he does use his powers when they're amped up in really interesting ways that make him seem like a really serious threat. The whole, Electro duplicates fighting the Amazing Friends in the middle of New York. That was some really good stuff. I mean, I could really see this as being part of a fairly epic storyline in the comics if it was taken a little bit more seriously. So anyway, while not flawless, I have to give the show credits for presenting a pretty good take on Electro. Now, getting into some of the more nitty-gritty stuff, we get to see more of what home life is like for Peter and the Amazing Friends, and not surprisingly, a household full of a bunch of teenagers. There's some personality conflict going on. Though I gotta say, Ava's problem generally seems to be the least serious of the whole situation. I mean, for God's sakes, how much are a pair of earbuds or something like this. I mean, this is a Logitech that I'm using. It costs like $12 at Walmart, and you can get a decent pair of earbuds for relatively for a comparative price. So her listening to that lecture just using her laptop's speakers and then complaining about the noise around her, seriously, Ava, take $10 and go to Walmart, or 10, $20 at Walmart. That your problem is solved. Or you think that this is something like that the Shield guys would just let her have if they're willing to give Spider-Man high-tech web shooters. You think they'd be willing to give Ava a set of earbuds? Now moving on. Of course, we do get another classic movie shout out, and this time around it's 2001: A Space Odyssey, when we have our the amazing friends in their little bubbles floating above the Earth. I have to say the show is actually doing a pretty good job of throwing those little Easter eggs out there for older viewers. Some things for, like I said, like speak slowly and clearly. One day I will get better at that, I promise you. For the older viewers, for parents who are watching the show with the kids. So, and I do respect that. It adds some depth, I think, to the show. Not really too thrilled with the way the amazing friends were kind of hanging out at the house, kind of getting on each other's nerves. I mean, seriously, guys, if it's that big of a deal, just go into another room, especially guys like Danny and Alex. Seriously, you can do that crap. You can listen to your music and you can play video games in some place that is not the living room, and probably, given the situation, oh yeah, and Ava too, you can probably listen to your laptop lecture, someplace else. I mean, I assume these guys have bedrooms and stuff. But, I'm just really nitpicking here at this point. Now, one thing that I have to admit I found myself doing was trying to figure out exactly what had happened to Electro and his powers. Now, trying to figure out real-world science in relation to superhero powers is basically a kind of an exercise that'll probably have you beating your head against a wall. Although, if you're interested in that sort of thing, there are actually a few good documentaries or TV specials that are floating around here on YouTube in their entirety that you can go and watch of that. I think there's one called like The Science of Superman or something like that I watched about 2 weeks ago when I just happened to come across it randomly here on YouTube. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, it's worth checking out. But anyway, getting back to it. Even though science was not my best subject in school, I was only over average about it. I was actually more of a social studies English kind of guy. My best guess is that Electro has some kind of gained some kind of influence over electromagnetic fields. Electricity and magnetism are very much tied, and there have been some extraordinarily inconsistent instances of guys like Electro, Magneto, and even Storm using their powers to kind of what's the term I want to use here? Well, okay, kind of cross the road. Oh my god, that's a horrible way of phrasing it. Well, anyway, there's like to give you an example, I remember one issue of, actually I'm pretty sure it was the Gambit ongoing series that Storm was guest starring in, and of course Storm has the power over lightning and stuff, but she used that to like screw around with a computer, not just zap it and blow it up, to actually have the computer do something, which seems like kind of a BS sort of power to give to Storm. But like I said, Electro and Magneto have occasionally been shown to do things that are a little bit beyond their purview in terms of the whole electricity versus magnetism thing. But comics are not always consistent with superhero powers. I mean, how often are is Rogue's seventh sense that she supposedly inherited from Miss Marvel? How often did that ever come up with? And yeah, that's a real thing. Or supposedly there was that thing that, speaking of Gambit, since I mentioned him, where I believe it was stuff written by Jeff Loeb that basically said that Gambit had his own version of the Jedi mind trick. And it was even called that. How often did he ever use that power? Almost never. It's one of those things that a lot of people don't even know about. But nature of superhero comics, folks. Anyway, I was a little confused as to why Peter just simply didn't have his old mechanical web shooters. I mean, what did he do with them? I mean, they don't really seem like things he just chuck in the trash just because S.H.I.E.L.D. gave him some high-tech goodies. That's more like a thing you sort of put in your trunk in the basement for, just in case, or nostalgia or something like that. I mean, granted, he might have done that. You know, bright shiny new toy. Let's throw the old thing out. But still, it just doesn't really seem like the sort of thing that Peter would do to me. Oh yeah, that's some good raspberry juice. And of course, we come to what's my main gripe with this episode. And it's the main gripe I tend to have with so many episodes of the show, and that is that the Amazing Friends act like idiots. Now, again, I understand that this is a show that's basically directed at like 8-year-old kids at the end of the day. And 8-year-old kids sort of have different storytelling needs than adults do. But the idea that Luke Cage is going to go and like start flipping out and trying to watch a football game in the middle of a fight with a supervillain, and White Tiger is freaking out over cheap electronics, although $100 for something like that is actually quite a good deal. But anyway, I mean, it's sort of like, yeah, kind of like if Peter had stopped in the middle of the fight, pulled out his phone to like check his Facebook or something like that. I mean, come on. And it's especially jarring in the case of Ava, who is normally presented as the serious, focused person. So, it really seems like every time the Amazing Friends take even a small step forward on the maturity scale, within an episode or two, they're back acting like complete and utter idiots. Now, some level of this can simply be excused by the fact that they're teenagers. And speaking as somebody who was a teenager for a good number of years in my life, I can understand that. It's a weird time being a teenager. You're struggling for that, trying to be more adult, but so many of your instincts just aren't quite there yet. So it's very easy to backslide. But given the kind of lives they lead, I sort of have to expect a little bit better of the Amazing Friends. But anyway, let me see here. Yeah, folks, I really kind of think that's about all I have for you this time around. There just really wasn't a whole lot to talk about. Oh yeah, I think Nova actually has a PlayStation Vita. Points to him for having that. That's actually a pretty cool system. I have one of those myself. But yeah, there's just not a lot of crunch here. The storytelling and the characterization are just a little lacking. Same as last time. Now, I'm hoping this is just sort of the new season taking some time to find its feet, because for all the complaints I had about last season, there were genuinely some interesting character beats going on here and there. I mean, we certainly haven't seen any of the depth that we had with stuff that was going on with like Harry, and Norman Osborn. I mean, that was some genuinely interesting stuff. Now, of course, we're only 2 episodes into the season, so I expect that to change. But I gotta say, I don't think this season is off to as strong a start as it could be. But anyway, looking forward to next week's episode. We're going to get to see their take on Rhino. From what I've heard, this is going to be a somewhat different take on the character than we're used to. I'm okay with that. I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen. And with that said, folks, we're going to wrap it up here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Who's Your Jedi. Till next time, take care and have a good one.